Hi guys, this is Jason, Archaix.com. You know, I've been telling you, I've been trying to do this video for a long time, and you know that everything has gotten in the way. I don't know if it's artificial intelligence X or me just being purely lazy, but I finally got around to getting with Amed Hashimi. He's right here from London. He's going to be joining us, and he's already sent me a plethora of materials from ancient Arabic beliefs through the Quran, the lens of the Quran, and we're going to get into that today. There's some Phoenix crossover, just basically reset data, but we're going to start with some of the really interesting things. We're going to start with prophecy. We're going to start with some things that were very interesting end time beliefs from the Quran, and Ahmed's going to break some of this down for us. And like I said, I'm really happy he's here, and I just want to welcome to the Archaix family, man. Thank you, Ahmed, for joining me.
Thank you, Jason. What a joy and honor to be here. Really, really honored. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, I've been looking forward to this. I'll just give you a little background. You already know 40 years as a Southern Baptist Christian, and you know I'm during that period though. I had come into contact with so much information, and in prison, I had read the Quran. And as in fact, I had received a very expensive, I believe it was gold or silver. It was either one of them, gold or silver trimmed Quran, leather, had a lock on it. It was really nice. And I had to have it special approved to get it into the prison. But it wasn't a book that has value to me outside of the information itself. I don't mean the Quran is not valuable. What I mean is that all my life I have been studying all these books and all these texts, and I have never really held value to the material book until recently as I started collecting old books. It's always been the data that I could extract and how I could compare it with other belief systems and all that. So the Quran, I was really shocked from my Judeo-Christian background to read in the Quran all about the tree of Zakum and the lost races of the Ad and the Thamud and the devastations, the blasts from heaven that occurred. And I'm seeing all these stories like, wow, these same stories that I found in the Akkadian cuneiform as related through the Babylonian Amorite syllabaries. I was very shocked in the commonalities between, but it is the same part of the world, just different time periods. So there was in my studies on like Edris and Iblis, the Satan and Enoch of the Old Testament, I found some parallels, and I also found it very unique throughout the Quran when it talks about destructions or historical events. It's coming from a non-human perspective. The Quran is being told like another race that values humans but considers itself not human. And we can call them jinn, we can call them angels, we can use whatever frames of reference is. I'm just sticking with the core data, which is a communication from entities that don't regard themselves as human and yet value humans when they're conveying these historical details. This is what I got from the Quran. Well, when I remove all the cultural dressing and I just stick with with the material. So
it's very interesting you say that, because having read the Quran, several times, and because a little bit about me as well. I grew up as a Shia Muslim. That's how I was raised, originally from, well, this avatar anyway is originally from Iraq, and I was born in Iran during the Iraq War, and I was raised in an Islamic household, quite fundamentalist in their views. The Shia believe in the 12 imams, a bit different than Sunni, which is the mainstream one, which is the large majority of Muslims. Shia is the second largest denomination of Islam. So it's a bit like Catholic and Protestant. It's very similar to that. But yeah, having grown up, I've had the privilege of growing up in the West since I was 4 years old. I grew up in Norway, and then here in the UK since I was 9. So I've had a crossover between Christianity, because I've grew up in the Western world. So I've had the privilege of seeing what the Western Christian traditions are and culture is. And because of my bilingual ability, I was able to see both sides, and until my awakening, so to speak. I don't like to use that word that often, but since 2008, since I started questioning my reality and everything, and I left Islam for a long time and didn't want to go there, but upon coming across your material, it reignited this spark in me to go. Okay, I need to go have a look again on the Quran. This was over a year ago when I came across your material,
Right.
and your videos, and yeah, and going back to what you're saying about the jinn or the angels, because for a monotheistic religion, when you read the Quran, you have the reference of Allah referring to himself as we. And in some other verses, he'll refer to himself as a first person. So I found that really strange for a text that that Muslims claim to be flawless, and
Right.
you know, like you said, I believe it's a corpus of many different traditions as well. But yeah, the reference of we happens a lot within the verses of the Quran.
It's also in the Old Testament multiple times in the book of Genesis.
Oh wow.
Yes, in the book
Okay.
of yes, in the book of Genesis, God seems to be having conversations with himself. One of them is, behold, the man has become as one of us, understanding good and evil. This is a creation account. Later, this
Mm,
happens again during the Tower of Babel story, where God as Elohim looks down. God, Elohim being a plurality of something that is supposed to be singular, but they begin having a conversation with themselves about mankind building the tower and what they're trying to do and how they're becoming a threat, because anything man imagines, they will be able to accomplish. So the
mm,
Tower of Babel reset what was caused. But those are just two examples. There's like three or four more in the Exodus and the book of Deuteronomy where God is having a conversation with himself. It seems to be God has multiple mouths. So
mm,
it's very interesting. So the
mm.
you're right about the Quran. The Prophet Muhammad did not just wake up one morning and write the Holy Quran. Like many other trailblazers, this man had access to cultural records and texts that far antedated Islam itself. Many Muslim scholars have also identified older elements, whole fragments of the Quran that are actually older than Islam itself. So
Mm,
I am aware that there is a tradition in the Arabic world of the antiquity and wisdom of the Sabaeans. And I'm aware also that the Sabaeans, like yesterday, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but yesterday I released a YouTube video on a very obscure occultic poem by somebody who was very well read. And
yes, I watched that.
yes, a lot of his influence
Mm,
comes from Kurdistan and the faith of the ancient Kurds. And these people referred to themselves as the people of the book. And
mm,
the Kurd, and this is what's interesting, is it's not talking about the Quran. The Sabaeans also in ancient times referred themselves as the people of the book. And in the Quran, they are called the people of the book. I believe the Sabaeans are mentioned in the Quran at least twice. So
they are. Yes.
I have notes on that. And this is where like Christianity and the book of Revelation, the book of Revelation is profound. They invented a story that John on the Isle of Patmos did this, but in doing so, they ignored the historical record where Cerinthus, a student of the Gnosis, had put together all the prophecies he could find of the Roman Empire, and much of it was from the books of the Sibyls. And he put all this
Mm,
together, and it was a collection of very ancient writings that ended up being our book of Revelation. Book of Revelation just got better and better and better as it passed through each cultural sieve. So the same thing with Quran. With Quran, we don't. With the Quran, I don't. It's not. It's my opinion that I don't believe that we have the beginning of a belief system. I believe that we have the end result of about 2,000 years of cultural information that was finally all put together in a single book. And it was
mm,
done through the sieve of Muhammad. And that's why it has this Islamic flavor. But it's absolutely packed full of very old references, especially the prophetic material. It's all pre-Islamic. It all comes from the Arabic world. That's why I hold value to the Quran and like the Zendavesta. And I'm pretty sure that there are elements of the Quran that were influenced by the Zendavesta. But uh, also, the 7th century BC, we had the Nabatean culture. I don't know if you're familiar with them. The Nabatean,
yes.
yes,
Yeah.
it's a mystery why they would abandon the most secure living area in the entire world. We still don't know. I've gone through some of the Muslim scholarship, their writings on Petra in Jordan. It's still it's still not known why they would do that. But for thousands of years, this underground city complex has been right there in Jordan with a single entrance. It's very hard to get into. You can't invade it. The Romans
Mm.
actually cut into the cliff face and like put a temple structure around the entry and all that. But by that time, that place was already 2,000 years old. It's even mentioned in Genesis chapter 14 as the cave of the Serum. It's like of Mount Seir. Before it was called Petra, it was called Mount Seir, and it was a dwelling of the troglodytes called the Horims, and the Horims were defeated by the Serum, and the Serum were a more advanced pre-Arabic people. They're actually descendants. They're actually ancestors of the Semitic and Arabian peoples. But at that
Mhm.
time period, they were called the Serum because it was considered Mount Seir. I believe that's Seir. Only later in
Mm.
history was it called by its Greek name of rock, which is Petra. But it's a very
That's
old
very
it's
interesting.
a
Yeah.
very old place. It's an underground city. It's very secure. It even has wells that have water sources in there. And this was the home of the Nabatean culture, for which they were a sedentary race, meaning they were so secure. They had all this underground area that they could just relax in. Don't have to worry about invasion. It's very easy to defend. So these people acquired libraries, and because they're on a major trade route, they had access to all these writings and traditions. And this is another source. I believe it's another source for the richness of the and diversity of material that we find in the Quran. It's we have to look at these things as uh it's there's never a point in history when we just have all the knowledge in one place. It's always moving. It's always in transit. Libraries get built up. Some of them by earthquake get trapped off, and nobody hears from them for 2,000 years. And we call it the Nag Hammadi Library in Egypt. Another one pops up in 1947, and we call it the Essene Library of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And earthquakes are all the time burying libraries for which we discover later. Like in the
Mm.
Sumerian, the reason we have so many hundreds of thousands of Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian text is because of earthquakes completely obliterating the substructures of ancient cities, and they just fill it in with rubble, put a new foundation on it, and keep building up. And that's why we have all these
Mm.
layers to these ancient cities. But in those layers are libraries. So the Quran is the result of, it's not the beginning of anything. It's the actual it's the end, the end of an acquisition period of all this scholarship put into one giant book, and told from four different perspectives. And this is, I remember
Mm.
reading in the Quran, it was it's the same story told from four different perspectives over and over. You see, it's very interesting.
Yep.
But
Yep.
I'm talking too
Yeah.
much. I want to get
No,
into,
it's all good.
yeah,
It's
I'm talking too much
fascinating,
because
Jason.
I need to get into I mean, the Arabic. This is a video I've been wanting to do, and this is not going to be our only video. We have too much to discuss. So,
Mm.
uh, I mean, I understand. As I was explaining to somebody in the Discord group last night, I was on Discord for 3 hours last night, just answering questions, talking, chatting, just being friendly. And somebody had asked me about Islam or Arabia, and I'll address that now. It's how is best to say that? Sometimes I talk too much, I lose my train of thought.
Was it a specific question on Discord?
Yeah, I can't remember what it was now. It was
Mm.
a and I remember now. Yeah, I was explaining that uh, a lot of people in the West, they have no idea, or they would be offended if you tell them the debt the West owes the Muslim world for the preservation of the West's own knowledge. And what I mean is most of the people in the West don't really know our history because it's not accurately taught.
Mm.
The absolute collapse of literacy to less than 1% of all of Europe being able to read
Wow.
and write for over 600 years is something that's not, no one wants to talk about it. This is why it's called the Dark Ages. It's not so much the Dark Ages because nothing was happening. It's called the Dark Ages because there was no literacy to convey what was going on. The only books we have in the Western world from that time were penned. About 90% of them were penned by clergy of the Roman Catholic Church. Now, the other 10% are those court scribes that were penning the annals, the Frankish annals, the Anglo-Saxon chronicles, the Irish annals, preserving different things. Very, 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 very few texts survived Europe at that time period. But where they did survive, many of the writings that were secreted out of Alexandria and the Pergamum library, out of Rome, when Rome fell, and all the provincial libraries, those books ended up in the hands of Muslim scholars. A lot of times they were conveyed by, basically, you're familiar with the image of the wandering Jew. That goes back to a very long period of time, to the exilarchy of ancient Persia, when the Jews had no country, they had no nation, so they had a center of government called the exilarchy that operated out of Iran. This was Persia, and there was always Jews on the road everywhere, all over the old Roman empires, all over the Middle East. And this is why the Jews became so international today. It is why Jewish culture speaks every language in the world. They're the only ones that do it. They're the only ones that do it. And it's because back then they were the movers and shakers. They were always on the road. They were always trading, and they dealt in books. And this is why the histories of our world have been tainted and rewritten through Jewish lenses over and over and over. This is why all our fraternal secretive societies, our Masons and Elks and Moose Lodge, all are basically the foundation of Western knowledge itself. There is Jewish flavor through it all. It's because they rewrote these books. They translated them, but where they got them from was Arabic scholars and Arabic caliphs, especially of the libraries of Baghdad. And this is because the Muslim scholars for about 900 years were hungry for knowledge. And with the collapse of Western civilizations, it left all these libraries available, and people, just to feed themselves, would sell scrolls and they would sell books. And books back then were with vellum pages and parchment pages, and then you know what a rolled scroll is. So these were sold, and Muslims had a lot of money, and they were the ones buying this, and this is why so many Western texts that started as old Greek texts, Homer and Hesiod and Theognis, the old Phoenician Sanchuniathon, the writings of Mauritania, many of the things from the Carthaginian libraries, they ended up being translated into Aramaic and Arabic. And these writings were preserved almost unchanged. I have so many Arabic scholarly PDFs that talk about the Great Pyramid and all the studies that were done. The Western world doesn't even know about these. All these pyramid researchers that I'm always arguing against and telling them you really don't know what you're talking about, the Islamic, Muslim, Arabic scholars, they preserve these texts. I'll be doing videos about those really soon, now that I've introduced Islam into the Archaix material. But there's a lot of crossover, and it's fascinating. But before we get lost on those tangents, let's get into this end times in the Quran. And
okay,
let's get this out. This is what I'm really interested in.
Are we talking about the signs of the hour by the Mohammedan prophecies?
So what I wanted to is, there's so much material here. There's so much. So I noticed a phrase here in it's in the Quran. It's the cave, chapter 18, 94. I believe that would be Surah 18.
Yep.
Okay, Surah 18 and 94. It's just it's a term. I'm familiar with Gog and Magog, but I'm reading it here, Zulkarnain.
Zulkarnain, yes.
Well, I'm going to tell you now, before you tell me anything. That sounds a lot like Al-Karnaim that's in the Old Testament, called Lord of the Two Horns. This is in the Old Testament.
It means the same thing in Arabic also.
It means the same thing in Arabic? Okay, the Lord of the Two Horns. Okay, it's the exact same thing as the Old Testament then. All right, okay. Yeah, the Lord of the... This is goddess worshiping society that they worship Ashtoreth, and they had a sub deity that was like in the background called Balaam, called excuse me, Baal. Baal only later, after the fall of goddess worship, became prominent. But at first, he was just a little deity that served the goddess too. And when Baal he basically did away with the goddess, which was the patriarchal takeover of all the matriarchal societies. This happened in the second millennium BC. He received the title of Lord of the Two Horns, and the dual city in northern Syria was changed. The name of the city was called Ashtaroth Karnaim in the Old Testament. But I saw that
Fascinating.
I saw that was very interesting when I seen that name, because it's very similar to the Hebrew.
Is that similar to the bull worshipping civilization at that time as well, Jason? Is that what you're referring to? Because
yeah, well,
that also refers to the bull.
Yeah, and see, this is that's a fundamental tenet of two places that that I have done basic videos on. One of them is Catalhoyuk. Catalhoyuk is nowhere near as old as archaeologists are trying to tell people. They're trying to push it back further, and they have reasons for doing that. They're trying to push it back further, but all the sigils, all the artwork, all the belief, you can tell what their beliefs are based off their iconography, off the idols, the things that we have found in their crypts and tombs, and there's perfect crossover with Knossos, the Minoan civilization. And you remember what they're famous for, the bullfights. And it was girls would get in there and bullfights, and they would do acrobats over the bulls. And then, like, a matador would come in, a guy, and he would actually slay the bull or get killed by it, one or the other. But females would flirt with death by doing acrobats over the bulls and all that. Well,
wow.
Yeah, it's the same exact culture. It was also in northern Syria, in the Lebanon area, and all through Canaan. It's the exact same time period. This is all 22nd, 21st, and 20th century BC. All these cultures were connected, and yeah, it's
Does that also tie into the Milesians as well, and the Iberians? You know, in that time,
my
Spanish culture.
Yes,
Yeah.
my leadus from Ionia was already a third millennium BC settlement, but it didn't get turned into the metropolis that we know of from the historical records, exporting fleet after fleet after fleet, colonizing the Mediterranean, northern Africa, and the coast of Europe. It didn't become that until about the 14th century BC. And that had to do with a massive exodus of many different cultures from Egypt because of a cataclysm. And this is another problem. The Colburn Bible tells the story way better than the book of Exodus does. But the Exodus event was real. There was a cataclysm. Thera detonated, completely destroyed Knossos and the Minoan culture, which gave rise to the Mycenaean Maritime Empire, which then gave rise to the Seven Against Thebes, which then led to the Great Mediterranean Trade War for the Black Sea trade, which we call the Trojan War, and the fall of Priam. I mean, all these events in history that are famous, they're actually dominoes. They're actually interrelated. Every single one of them was basically the effect of a prior cause. The prior cause was the other major event right before. I document all this in Chronicon. I show the flow of events is magnificent, and it all started with this great disaster that we know of as the Exodus event. The 10 plagues on Egypt are the same thing as the 10 disasters that were recorded in China. This was not something local to Egypt. It was worldwide. It just happened to be one volcano in the Mediterranean. But on the other side, in the Americas, there was total ruin and devastation. And in Asia as well, in China, all the way to India. It was massive. But this started migrations to all other areas. Everybody tried to get the hell away from Egypt because Egypt took the worst. But yeah, that's Colburn Bible's fascinating. So there's something I isolated here I want to ask you about. I'm going to read this to you. This is Surah 18, number 99. It says, "On that day we shall leave them to surge like waves on one another. The trumpet will be blown, and we shall collect them all together, and we shall present hell that day for unbelievers to see, all spread out." Now, before I ask for your opinion on this, I have in my Chronicon for the years after 2070, I have Nostradamus quatrains, and I have some passages from the Zendavesta that basically say that once the redeemed, once the elect and holy are removed from the garden, which is the earth, once we are taken away, then the scales will drop from all the unbelievers' eyes, and they're going to see the world for what it truly is, what they accepted as their home. Is this something similar to what this is saying here?
Can you repeat the verse again? That verse again,
It says
please, Jason.
on that day we shall leave them to surge like waves on one another. The trumpet will be blown. That's the key for the timing. And we shall collect them all together. That's talking about the holy ones. Now it switches
Yep.
over, and we shall present hell that day for unbelievers to see, all spread out.
It sounds like it is, Jason, from what I
I didn't
can
have
see from
this
that
one, and I
interpretation.
believe I'm going to
Yeah,
include it with the other ones now,
it's
because
worth including. It's well spotted as well, because that definitely ties in. Yeah, I mean, again, it's to me, it sounds like
so
it
in the
crosses
narrative,
over with your research there.
in the narrative here, because I don't like to take things out of context, but
Yep,
you have it in these you have these in chronological order as they're presented in the Quran right here, and
yep.
it
The, the
says
yep.
right here, those for whom the good record from us has gone before will be removed uh, far therefrom. It's
Hmm.
This is exactly what I've been telling people, that my belief is that in the middle of the apocalypse, because this is all apocalyptic. It's talking about the invasion of Gog. It's talking about Gog and Magog. It's talking about the trumpets being being blown here, which gives us the timing for the trumpets in the book of Revelation. It says right here in Surah 21, 101, I think it says the prophets, what is that? Anbiya?
And Anbiya,
Anbiya?
Anbiya means the prophets.
The prophets,
It's a
okay.
plural. It's a plural meaning for
This
the
is what I've been
prophets.
saying, that halfway through the apocalypse, the elect, the chosen, the redeemed, they're not going to have to go through the worst of it. They're not. They're going to enter the apocalyptic period, but they're not hanging around. There's going to be an event where they're whisked away, and I saw that in here. And in the Quran, it's described as a gentle wind that blows, and when it blows, all the elect disappear. Isn't that's
It
crazy? I
it is
saw that.
crazy,
I don't know where it is
yeah.
in these PDFs, but I read that.
Did you say it was 21? It was
I
definitely
mean,
included in there because I thought it related to your
to,
research. That's why I included those
yes,
verses in
this
there.
is Surah 21, verse 101. Those for whom the good record from us has gone before
Yep.
will be removed far therefrom. Though, for those who don't understand, this is speaking from the perspective of the jinn or the angels. The angels are telling Muhammad that those for whom the good record, or the prophets are telling us that these angels are speaking. These angels are saying that they're turning in the records of those who are worthy.
Yep.
And but those who are not worthy, they're not turning their records in, therefore they have to stay here. And that's
Yeah, and it goes on to say, they shall not hear the slightest sound of it, while they abide in that which their own selves desire. So
yes, that's
again,
what
this
I've
is
been
like,
saying. The people that
yeah,
have chosen this world are going to suffer those consequences in the world. It's remember, in my view, we're heading toward the beginning. The closer we get to the end, we're actually just getting closer to a whole new beginning. It's a reset that takes us right back to Genesis. But there's a lot of
yeah.
people that are not going to participate in that reset. They're going to make their exodus.
Also to add, Jason, because one thing about these translations, a lot gets lost in translations, and
Oh, I
because I
believe that.
have a strong Arabic, I'm very strong with my Arabic. I can read, write fluently. I'm talking classical Arabic, not just modern Arabic, because the Arabic written in the Quran is classical as opposed to modern. What we get today is a different, slight variation.
Right.
But in verse 102, it says, so it says, they shall not hear the slightest sound of it while they abide in that which their own selves desire. However, when I read it in Arabic, it says, Ma ashtahat anfusuhum khalidun. Khalidun
It has
means
the word
eternal.
hell.
No, khalidun is eternal. Khalid means eternal.
Okay.
Hell is Jahannam, or is referred to as Jahannam.
Okay.
Khalidun is eternal or immortality. Their selves are immortal. So it refers to those who do not hear the slightest sound of it, which is the hell that is going to come on the day.
Right.
They will be removed. And those are the ones who they in themselves are eternal. So this refers to the immortal soul concept that you talk about as well.
That is amazing, because it can almost be interpreted, if we take the fantastic, if we remove the fantastic, it can almost be interpreted as exactly what I say about the informed field. If you truly believe yourself protected from any future event, then the future itself will make sure you're protected. Meaning you're still going through the event, you're just not suffering the consequences. It's like a bunch of rocks falling from the sky in your neighborhood, and your house and property are absolutely untouched, but everybody else is devastated. And we've seen examples of this in real life way before. It hasn't even been an apocalypse, and we know of many examples where tornadoes went right down somebody's street and ripped up everybody's houses, and nobody can figure out why one house isn't even missing a shingle. So we have examples.
Yeah, further proves that the power of the informed field, and how we are the masters of our own reality in the personal, as you always kept on drilling home to us on your channel. Yeah, I mean, even it goes on 103, verse 103. So from that same chapter, the 103, it says, the greatest terror on the day of resurrection will not grieve them, and the angels will meet them. This is your day which you were promised. So again, it's kind of referring to those who won't be affected, who will be taken away from these events, these cataclysmic events that will come.
So the very next verse is, that one's going to interest me. That one's going to interest me. Verse 104?
104, yeah. And the day when we shall roll up the heaven like a scroll rolled up for books. As we began the first creation, we shall repeat it. A promise binding upon us. Truly, we shall do it.
There it is. That's the whole Archaix premise right there. We're heading toward a reset. And the book of Revelation is basically the introduction to Genesis. It's not the other way around. Genesis is generations. It doesn't mean it's first. It was just put in the beginning of the Old Testament because it describes what people used to believe was the creation, but it's not. It's a renovation. And the story of our existence right here in the simulacrum makes more sense if we switch the two and we read Revelation as preparing us for what is about to occur, and Genesis as history, because it is. We were reset. That was not a creation event. It was a reset from when we were technologically advanced. So this is exactly what this is telling me right here. It says, we're going to roll up heaven like a scroll, which is going to be a reset. You already know that's the sixth seal. It even uses the phrase of the sixth seal. The heavens rolled up like a scroll. But the sun darkens, the moon turns blood, rocks fall from the sky, people hide in the mountains, they pray to God. That's all the sixth seal. But it says right here, even as we produced the first creation, so shall we produce a new one. That's a reset. There's no better way the Quran.
Most certainly.
There's no better way the Quran could have said reset.
Yeah.
It is. That's it right there. So moving on to chapter 81, Surah 81. Is that the Arabic title, the overthrowing? Or did you put that?
Surah 81.
You put titles like the cave.
So there's a translation for the titles. Each one has a translation.
So in the Quran, there is a surah 81. It's titled the overthrowing, and it's basically describing the sixth seal. Now remember, I have done dissertations explaining the sixth seal is not the apocalypse. It's the introduction to it. Because the six seals are basically telling all errants, telling all people who are watching for the signs and all in all cultures all around the world, look, this is what's got to happen first, and then the apocalypse is going to unfold. Now, here it is right here. When the sun
Yep.
is overthrown, and when the stars fall, when the hills are moved, and when the seas rise, and when the pages are laid open, and when the sky is torn away. Every bit of this, Surah 81, 1 through 3, verse 6 and 10 through 11, every bit of this is mentioned in the sixth seal of the apocalypse, the book of Revelation. I have dated this based off 58 centuries of Phoenix phenomenon occurrences to, you already know, May 16th, depending upon what hemisphere you're in, May 15th or May 16th of the year 2040 is the next Phoenix phenomenon. And the Phoenix phenomenon perfectly mirrors what's being described right here on its greater magnitudes. Other times it just passed by and was seen, but on its really bad passages, that's exactly what happens right here. It's I found that very interesting. It's
Yeah, it's powerful stuff, isn't it? How it all crosses over again with your research,
yeah.
and coming from a book that's about 1400 years old.
Oh, well, there's no doubt. We're reading the passages translated into English that are 1400 years old. But
Yep.
like I said, this material comes from far older source materials. Muhammad just didn't wake up and write all this. He got
For sure.
he had a library he had access to, just like Nostradamus. Excuse me, Mikhail del Nostradam admitted in a letter to King Henry IV, he admitted in that letter and to his son Caesar that he didn't come up with the quatrains. He actually codified all the prophecies that he had found in an entire library that was being hidden from the Inquisition. And once he codified all the prophecies in his books called the Centuries, once he was finished, he then burned all those books, because to get caught with any books that were on the papacy's forbidden list meant you burnt with the very book you got caught with. So Nostradamus was in addition to that, he was also Jewish. So the very fact, a lot of people don't know that about Nostradamus. Nostradamus, in his writings, he totally admits 100% he was Jewish, converted. He was converted to Catholicism only because it was necessary for him to be able to conduct his business. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. So I want to read this right here. It's Surah 50, or actually, this was Surah 50, and this one's okay. This is I believe it's Surah 30, verse 19. You have it at the bottom of one of the
Right.
documents you sent me. It shows the actual Arabic above it, but I found this really. Listen to this. The living leaves from the dead, and the dead leaves from the living, and the earth will be brought back to life after its death. And this was the way they will come out. Man, that's another reset statement. 100%. That's a reset statement. So yeah, that is yeah, I found that truly awesome. I just wanted to touch on these things on that one document, End Times Quran, because this next one we're probably not going to have time to go all the way through this next one.
It's quite a long I mean, there's quite a lot of verses there from different civilizations.
Yeah, this
so,
we
can cover the Ad and Thamud if you want, just to cover those.
Well, I got some right here. I got some right here prepared. This I wanted to ask your permission. Can I provide these in the
Yes.
I just started releasing the survival pack. So I'm thinking about throwing these PDFs in there for people who want to see all the stuff out of the Quran. All three of these PDFs.
By all means, Jason. Yes.
I got to ask your permission because these survival packs will be going all around the world. So the whole concept behind I don't know, my super pack is just my material, and it's a lot. I mean, it's material I pulled from over 1,000 sources, and it's all my published books and unpublished books and hundreds of, like almost 400 charts. And my super pack is huge, but it's just my material. The survival pack is different. The survival pack is a lot of the books on PDFs. It's over 2,700 books in there, and it's over 2,300 old images and photos that are straight out of all the old books you see in my library. Everything in my library here is from the 1800s. Everything, every single book you see here is from the 1800s up to 1912. So I took photographs out of every single book. I have more on. I can't fit them all, but I took photographs out all. It ended up being 2,300 and something old pictures. And I know a lot of these have never hit the internet. But the reason I did the survival pack is that's what it's for. It's basically to re-educate the world. Here's what you need to re-educate the world. This is what you need if the infrastructure collapses, if the internet goes down, if censorship gets so out of control that we can't exchange freely information anymore, at least you in your community will be able to share, because our technological devices will work for 10, 20, 30 years, but the infrastructure that supports the telecommunications may not. The internet and all that stuff, that's a very fragile system. But I don't know. So anyway, that's what the survival pack. The survival pack is basically everything the world needs to know after 2040. And so here's what we need to share, because by 2040, I'm pretty sure almost all the libraries will be gone. Because as long as we continue to digitize all of our knowledge and nobody's taking care of old books, then after the next reset, after the next when the 2040 Phoenix phenomenon occurs, I promise you about 90% of the world's knowledge is going to be lost. So it happens all the time. So we'll
that's for the importance of hard copies, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Jason.
Yes, it is. I know a couple people who took the super pack and are now taking the survival pack, and it costs a lot of money because it's thousands of pages, but they're literally printing them all up. They're printing everything up just to have the copies.
Amazing.
So this what is Bukhari? What is that?
Bukhari.
Yes,
is a historian who wrote down all the sayings of Muhammad, all the teachings of Muhammad at the time. So it's a well-known, respected, and accepted widely by both the Shia and the Sunni Muslims, of all the traditions of Muhammad, and all the sayings. So this is a historian who sat down at the time and from probably, I'm not sure whether he was living at that time, but he drew from those who witnessed Muhammad's sayings and the events that took place during his lifetime, and so wrote down, and that's known today as the Sunnah. It's one of the Sunnah. So you have the Quran as in one hand for the Muslims, and then you have the Sunnah, which is the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad, and his basically the way he acted, the things he spoke about, and the events that took place in his life. So Bukhari is just one of those, one of the main ones. You have Sahih al-Muslim, the Muslim Sahih Muslim.
I see his name on the list too.
Yeah, so you have several there that reference. These are references that go back, as far as we can date back to Muhammad's time. How accurate that is, we don't know, but Muslims take this as gospel, so to speak.
Concerning this Bukhari and what I just stated, I find it really synchronistic that all of a sudden I'm looking at this passage after I just told you about 90% of knowledge being erased because of the Phoenix phenomenon reset. And I see, we're not going to get into it in this video, but we're going to get into the Phoenix phenomenon issues and historical disasters and all that, the Ad and Thamud. We'll do that on the next video. And I would like to do that like this week. I don't like to, if I'm doing a series, I'd like to get them all out. I don't want to wait. So if you got more time later this week, man, let's knock the
Let's roll with it, brother. I'm happy to do it. Yeah, so, absolutely.
Yeah, we have a lot to cover for a second video. This is basically an intro. I wanted to introduce you to my audience and go over some of these things, and because a lot of people, like I said, man, a lot of people in the West do not understand the richness of the materials that has been preserved by Arabic scholarship. And I am so impressed with Arabic scholarship just based off my Great Pyramid studies, because I seem to be one of the only people on YouTube or publishing in the publishing world, publishing books about the Great Pyramid from my perspective. And my perspective is man, I mean, I got a lot of my material from Arabic scholars. I'm citing all these books. I'm reading right now I'm reading I believe you pronounce his name Al-Biruni, the chronology or the antiquity of nations, the chronology of nations. There's different ways it's been titled in English, but the history of the nations. But Al-Biruni 1,000 years ago, an Arabic scholar, was writing things there. It's like, wow, this dude knew the world, and he was writing things about the Great Pyramid for which modern day pyramid researchers don't have a clue. They didn't even know about, like, the staining of the Mediterranean 200 feet high on the white limestone casing blocks, that it was widely known that pilgrims for centuries were walking by the Great Pyramid, and that's one thing they would always point at and say and tell their children, hey, you see that right there? Do you see why the bottom of the Great Pyramid is darker than the top part? It's because the top part wasn't underwater. Halfway up the pyramid, it was gleaming white, but halfway down the pyramid, it was stained. And this is a part of my chronicon as well. I show where there was an earthquake. Subsidence happened when the Great Flood occurred, the day the sky fell, the collapse of the vapor canopy. There was also an earthquake, and that earthquake totally answers for 100% of the data of the scientists that came out with the books about the Black Sea flood and when the Mediterranean was created in a day because the Strait of Gibraltar. It's these guys are absolutely dead on right. They just got the year wrong, but that actually happened. The Mediterranean was a series of shallow lakes, maybe small seas, but there was hundreds of stone cities in those beautiful lush valleys. And then the Strait of Gibraltar broke because of massive earthquakes in the North African plate. Strait of Gibraltar used to be connected. There was no strip of water between southern Spain and northern Africa. That was closed off. And
so there was a land bridge there.
Yeah, it was a land bridge. It used to be called the Pillars of Hercules. And when the Pillars of Hercules broke, this is like connected to the Samson destroying the pillars and all that. And when the pillars broke, then the water rushed in. But because the Atlantic was so high and the Mediterranean valleys were so low, then at 750 miles per hour, a 250-foot high wall of water overtook over 200 stone cities. This is the origin of the Great Flood myth. This is why the people that survived on that mountain ranges of Greece and the Peloponnesus and all through from Lesbos to Chios, all the way to the Italian peninsula and Sardinia, this is why those people were so adamant that the whole world flooded, because their world did flood. But it was completely flooded out. And this is the origin of the Mediterranean. And the Great Pyramid used to not even be near a body of water. When it was originally made, the Great Pyramid was hundreds of miles inland. Now it's just 108 miles from the Mediterranean. It wasn't like that. And all this is in Arabic. All these old Arabic texts are giving up the game. I have several. We'll go into some if you want to do another video just on the Great Pyramid and Islam and all. I could do.
That would be amazing. Yeah.
I could show you things from Arabic scholars I've never even said on YouTube before. Things are amazing about. This is why I know the pyramids were built before the flood. I know I got the date for them down.
100%.
Yeah,
I mean, even the Quran, the Egyptian region is mentioned even in the Quran that it was drowned. The people of Pharaoh were drowned. I think it was. I think we'll go into it another time, but I think it was chapter 8, verse 54, where they said like the behavior of the people, the Pharaoh and those before them, they denied the signs, and so the Lord drowned them from their guilt or something like that, if I can remember it correctly. So people of the Pharaoh, and every time we refer to the Pharaoh, that's the region of Egypt where the pyramids are. So and that also
that'd be
lines up with the whole flooding of the pyramid.
That'd be another good one. But back to Bukhari. I had just mentioned to you about 90% of all knowledge will be erased when the digital world collapses. That infrastructure is gone. We no longer have access. It's the exact same thing that happened when the Anunna lost their infrastructure, and that later humans started writing things on tablets because they didn't know how to make the actual tablets like these that the Anunna had. The Anunna used these, and the Sumerians called them tablets of destinies because to them, they did everything. They could order food and they would appear. They could make machines appear in the sky and drop crates full of stuff. They could use these tablets and talk to each other over great distances, and the local Sumerians were amazed that the Anunna could do these things. So they kept their tablets in these little bags. So to the Anunna, it was all, I mean, to the Sumerians that watched these activities, they're like, man, the Anunna are gods. These bearded foreigners that came among them, they're gods. And if you have a me was a tablet of destiny. It's called a me. It was M-E. If you had a me, you protected it in this little bag. And this is why the bag you see on Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, Rashamric reliefs, you see that bag being carried only by gods. The reason is it was gods. They were considered to be God if they were in possession of a tablet of destiny. So this is where this is cargo cult phenomenon. It is the usage of primitive frames of reference after the collapse of an infrastructure by a people who didn't quite understand the technology they were observing. So this is almost the entire story of the Anunnaki and the Anunna that's been conflated. It's been totally blown out of proportion. So we get back to Bukhari, and he says here, Bukhari 1036, the hour in the last day, that's in parentheses, the hour will not be established until knowledge will be taken away. Earthquakes will be very frequent. Time will pass quickly. Afflictions will appear. Murders will increase. Money will overflow amongst you. That's a hell of a series of prophecies. The first one I want to isolate is that knowledge shall be taken away. Okay, for knowledge to be taken away and it's not yet the apocalypse, and I'm going to explain why these are totally before the apocalypse. What he's describing, in my opinion, is knowledge will be taken away. Okay, you do know that I am predicting a Carrington type event. I don't know what that entails. It may not be as serious. It may be just converting the entire world over to a new communication system. I don't know. But the internet's going to go down in some form this year, and it's going to be staged, and it's going to be brought back up, but it's going to have differences, and it's probably going to be blamed for a natural phenomenon like the Carrington event. If the Carrington event actually ever happened, it's still it's because so many people believe that it did, then that means an event can unfold, making more people believe that another one occurred. So something doesn't have to be true in the historical record to induce people to believe that it will be true, that it can unfold again. So
you think this will be a controlled event where they would, obviously the internet is such a huge threat to the elite that the knowledge that is out there for those who are seeking it, of course.
yes.
The internet is a very expansive tool, but yeah, I mean, you think that that's what they're going to do is to limit the knowledge that's there? I think that's the whole point of the Carrington event.
I believe when they decided to commercialize the internet, I mean, it's been around since the 60s and 70s. There's always been an ARPANET. There's always been something that the military and the university has been able to communicate and all that. And it improved over time. And once they commercialized it in like 1990, 1991, I believe their intention was to do exactly what it did. And that is not only distract humankind, but also completely pervert, lower the ethics and morals, make all these things that were forbidden in different cultures normalized to where everybody's on the same page. I mean, everything's out there now. We totally accept things today that if they would have appeared in the media in the 1960s, people would have been shocked. So things are you can go on the internet now. You don't even have to have parental controls on devices anymore. They'll go straight to everything you can imagine. So we have a situation where they did this intentionally, but they probably didn't think that they weren't going to be able to control the awakening that also came with it, because that might have been unforeseen. There's nothing the elite do without financing several think tanks at the exact same time. Yeah, they're trying to control all outcomes. There's no doubt. But this the knowledge be taken away was one element. He said earthquakes will become very frequent. That's just like Jesus said in the New Testament, that the frequency of earthquakes is not evidence of apocalypse. This is something Jesus said too. In the last days they will increase, but the end is not yet. He said that. So here's the interesting one. Time will pass quickly. Well, for time to pass quickly, this is an inference that the measuring of time that we understand today and in Bukhari's time, which is the same, nothing's changed since Bukhari's time. So this is indicative of something unusual. And that's exactly what we have with the second and third trumpet of the book of Revelation, which would happen after the Phoenix phenomenon in 2040. Now, I have isolated this event as 2046, the return of the Nemesis X object, which just so happens to be a totally different chronological factoring as the end of the Mayan long counts 13 Bactans of 1,872,000 days. It also ends on 2046, and that has nothing to do with the chronology of the Nemesis X object. It's totally different. And it's also absolutely different from the geometrical calendrical relationships that were discovered in the Great Pyramid of Giza in 1924 by engineer David Davidson, who shows, he even explains, he says, I do not know why, but we have an orbital history of our world, and the Great Pyramid documents a 6,084 year period that Earth has moved around the sun 6,084 times. But according to the geometry of the Great Pyramid measured by the 4 base diagonals, he produces a chart, and I've shown that chart in several of my videos, and he says the final year that Earth will maintain this orbit is the year 2045. He says, I don't know why. He says, but in 2046, the world will assume a different movement. And this is exactly, he doesn't even cite the Mayan stuff. This is 1924. Yeah. This is exactly what Mayan prophecy says. It says that the 13 Bactans measured time as a continuum. And in the end of the 13th Bactan, 2 things will happen. There will be an invasion of demons, and there will also, this is what the Maya say, I can't even pronounce it. It's Tzol something. The name of the Mayan demons is long, but
Tezcatlipoca, I think is the name.
I can't remember, but it's
the one of the smoking
demons.
mirror. Yeah.
I read some stuff about smoking mirror. And, but it's an invasion of demons, and time will collapse. Now, for time to collapse is not that bad. Revelation describes exactly what's happening, and it makes sure that we interpret it correctly. And what I mean is in the 7 trumpets. And remember, this Quranic stuff is introducing the beginning of the trumpets right here. It keeps mentioning the trumpets. So in the trumpet period of the book of Revelation, this is 2046 and afterward, like 2052. In this period here, it specifically states that God will reduce by a third the day, the night, the sun, the stars, and the moon. It was very specific. It didn't just say day and night. It also mentioned stars, the sun, and the moon, so you would understand. If everything is reduced by a third, then our 365-day year becomes 243 days. If you take a third out of every day, our 24-hour day becomes 16 hours. So the final apocalypse, which is supposed to be from 2046 to 2106, a 60-year period, has a third removed from it, making it a 40-year period instead of 60 years. So 40 is also the number of trial and testing all throughout the Old Testament. I don't know what 40 signifies in the Arabic numerology, but in the old Judaic, Hebraic, rabbinical, 40 is the number of trial and testing. So I found it interesting that even in the Quran, we have a reference to a future time when time itself is going to be abbreviated. And in the book of
That's not
Revelation,
in the Quran.
oh no,
That's
that's not in the Quran. You're
the
right. That's
traditions.
Bukhari. That's
Yeah,
Bukhari
yeah, it's Bukhari. Yeah,
from the
it's
sayings of Muhammad.
sayings of Muhammad.
Right.
That's right. Yeah, it's
Okay.
the prophecies. Yep. I mean, even there's one where it says the last hour would not come unless you fight with people whose faces are like hammered shields
What does that
as
mean?
well, which
I
is
did
quite
see that.
interesting.
I did see that.
Yeah. I mean, it's quite interesting. One can take it as well as armor. People are like, but it's hammered, so it's different. Um, but again, you've got right now these super soldier programs that's going on, where they're
Right.
developing robotic soldiers, fighting for wars. The whole whole Terminator puts a whole new spin on the Terminator
Yes, it
films.
does. Yes, it
So
does. So, what
yeah,
do you think of this? Now we see afflictions will appear, murders will increase. None of this is all just signs of the last days.
yep.
But Bukhari 1036 states also as a sign of the last days that money will overflow amongst you. That statement has never been truer. The Arabic world has enjoyed more wealth in the last 50 years, and the West has been draining their treasuries buying oil from
Yep.
the Arabic nations. And there are whole Arabic cities that are absolutely far more sophisticated than Western cities now.
Yep.
Qatar and Kuwait. And these people in the West don't even know the level of sophistication that these people live by.
Yeah.
If
These are the Gulf Arabs that you're referring to, because
yes,
there's
I
this
am.
two because the Gulf, there's a differentiation. Those in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon have a
Right,
different heritage to the Gulf Arabs. The Gulf Arabs are originally from they were Bedouin tribes.
right.
So the ones that are ruling for the elite there at the moment. But yeah, the money is overflowing like
Well,
crazy. I mean, you
Saudi
go to the
Arabia too.
Emirates.
Saudi Arabia too has also
Yep.
enjoyed great wealth. Uh,
Yep.
Jordan. I mean, in the Arabic world, the only ones really suffering are the Palestinians. I mean,
Yep.
as far as economy goes, but
For sure.
But
Yep.
yeah, I think, and we have to take this into context too. When Bukhari says that Muhammad foresaw that in the last days money will overflow amongst you, I mean, we have to take that into context. Muhammad was living in a day where money was rare. You know, so to see a future time when like everybody's got money and we can do something. Right now, you and I could just go get a new cell phone. We can go shopping, get some new clothes. I mean, for people in Muhammad's time, it was a big deal to be able to afford new raiment, to be able to go to, and when you showed back up at home with a new robe and new sandals, people knew, said, "Oh wow, you upgraded." You know, it was a big deal. So I mean, even in old Europe, especially during the Dark and Middle Ages, all the way up to the Renaissance period, I mean, clothes were taken care of to the point where sons fathers would save their clothes and their sons would wear their father's clothes. I mean, it was bad for a while. It was bad for a
Wow.
while. So, but yeah, the hammered shield is interesting. But what's the next one? Ibn Mahaj. How you say it?
Ibn Majah. Yeah, yeah. When the shepherds compete in constructing tall buildings, that is one of the signs of the last hour.
Man, look, that started in 1902, my brother. 1902, the world received the very first skyscraper, and it was in New York City. It's a year 1902 again, but yeah,
Yep.
the very first skyscraper was erected. Now, some people like to argue and say, "Oh, no, the Eiffel Tower was taller than that and all that," but the Eiffel Tower is a frame. It is not a commercial construction. It is not a building. It's just a frame. The Eiffel Tower is taller, but it's not multiple floors where people in offices can work and all that. Technically, if you Google it, you'll find out the first skyscraper is 1902 in New York.
Wow.
But yeah, that's true. In the last days,
Yeah.
they start building castles in the sky. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. So, are you familiar with Ibn Fadlan?
Ibn what?
Ibn
What?
Fadlan. It's Ibn
Fadlan.
Fadlan. Fad.
No.
It's
FAD.
Fadlan.
Okay. Fadlan. Fedland. No, no, I'm not. No,
Okay.
no.
Well, I'm about to
Okay.
educate you, my brother. I'm
Please
about to
do.
educate you. Listen. So, a some Muslims were traveling a little too far north in Europe, just exploring, maybe a trade route. I can't remember the exact background story. And uh some hostilities broke out. I believe they had an African with them, a dark black-skinned African, and they came across some giants. When I say giants, this is from the Arabic perspective, because when they came across these 6'5", 7 foot tall Norse Vikings, they didn't know what to think. These men were huge. They were fully armored. They wore iron helms. They used steel weapons. They had gold and silver gilt. They looked like something out of ancient myths, because we had two different cultures here. We had a metal masterwork warrior class of people who were very big on exploration and hunting and all that, and in warfare, but they were master metallurgists, the Vikings, these Norsemen. They came across these Arabs, and there was an incident, something involving a falchion, a special Middle Eastern type sword, and I can't remember what the incident, but it ended up being a massacre, a bloodbath. Well, Ibn Fadlan was a little Arabic scholar who basically survived this and joined the Vikings and traveled with them and wrote for 2 years of everything he saw. And he was shocked. It was Islam's first contact with the Norse.
With the West. Wow.
Well, not so much the West, not the West,
but with the Norse.
but with the Norse. This is north of the Rhine River. Whole different cultures up there that were in Europe. They were the most wild and unruly during the entire Muslim occupations of Spain and France. Yeah, the Islam never made it that far north. Nor would they have ever. Islam would have never been able to cross the Rhine. Just like the Romans in the Teutoburg Forest. The Romans took legion after legion after legion into the north and still couldn't take it. They had battles that they won, but what did they do? They retreated right after those battles because they knew. They knew all the Norse, the Burgundians and the Heruli and the Angles and the Saxons and Jutes. They're going to do is just go tell more and more villages to come join, and then more and more people. It's just an endless amount of gigantic people. So even the Romans were small. Mediterranean peoples have never been big. The Mediterranean peoples around the Mediterranean have always been very short of stature. The Romans, the shortest out of all of them. Yeah, the actual Roman soldier was 5'3". Yeah, that's full grown male. The actual Roman centurion, the actual soldier, was 5'3". Men that were 5'6", 5'7", and 5'8" were specifically selected for the Praetorian Guard. This is the military of the city of Rome itself. Because the actual military, the generals could never bring their army across the Rubicon. The Rubicon River, no Roman general was allowed to bring his troops across the Rubicon. And this is why Caesar, when he passed the Rubicon, that's why it became a famous term. Are you gonna cross the Rubicon? Because that means it's the point of no return. Once you pass the Rubicon with an army, it's the point of no return. Because now the Senate will have you killed. So when Caesar did it, it became a famous saying in the West to pass the Rubicon. But anyway,
that actually reminds me, Fadlan. That actually, I don't know if you ever watched the film 13th Warrior.
It might be based off that. It might be based off that text.
It might be based off his life because I remember. I mean, it's got a few fantastical elements into it, fictional elements, but it reminds me of that story. I think Antonio Banderas or
he's like the only scholar. He's like the only Arabic scholar to ever write.
He was from Baghdad. He was from Baghdad,
and he made it home.
Like
he made it home with his writings, and then published it in. But Ibn Fadlan. And what's crazy is that in the West there were no writings about these people. There were none. I mean, they themselves wrote in the Futhark, the runes, but to them, writing was done very, very, very conservatively. They would write on rune stones, which were basically just messages on monuments that we passed this point at such and such date. You know what I mean? Because they were great explorers. I mean, they even made it all the way to North America and left us the Kensington runestone. Yeah, yeah. A lot of people
It's
don't know about the
incredible. I mean, the Vikings are a fascinating culture.
the
In a
Kensington
variety of
runestone was
sense.
left there in 1362. It was dated 1362, left in North America, and only because of a storm upturned an old tree. The roots were exposed, and inside the roots was this giant slab of rock with Futhark on it, with all these Norse and Gothic runes.
Mm.
But yeah, I was just
Do you
gonna.
think they're yeah? Oh yeah, sorry, I'm digressing from
No,
the
no, I just want to know if you
yeah.
knew about Ibn Fadlan. It's a
No,
fascinating
I'll
story.
definitely read it. There's another book called the Crusades through an Arab's eyes, which you would find fascinating.
Yeah, I would.
It's a very unbiased uh, version of events of the Crusades, because it's written by various Islamic scholars, but also mentions a few Western ones as well. But it's a great book, and yeah, I thought that you might be interested in reading something like that, because it references so many old books in there as well,
Right?
and from the Islamic period. So it'd be fascinating to see what you think of that as well.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
check this out. We're gonna have to save the rest for the next video, because what we're gonna do in the next video are those 10 major signs. I can't pronounce this. Sahih Muslim.
Yep. Sahih Muslim.
Okay.
Yep.
We're
That's
gonna go
correct.
through the 10 major signs about the end of the world, because I'm really curious about some of these words I'm not familiar with. Like Al Jafari,
Yep. Yep.
Jafari, Asid
Yep.
Al Jafari. Uh,
Yep.
yeah, but we got 10 signs to go through, the Phoenix phenomenon to go through, and we have 26 individual Mohammedan prophecies that are found in various Islamic traditions. We have them all itemized, the exact surah book where they can be found. We do not have time to go through. This is a wealth of material of prophetic stuff. We're going to see how much Islam lines up with the Archaix version of the future. And even when it deviates, we're going to make notice of that too, see if it lines up with the book of Revelation or Zoroastrian prophecies. But this is a wealth of information provided by Amed right here. We cannot get to it in this video. You guys leave comments down on the bottom and tell me how much you enjoyed this presentation, and you want to see Amed back. Yeah, even if you don't want to see him back, he's coming back. So, but hey, let us know how we did on this. You guys know this is essentially one of my very, very first podcasts. I don't have a lot of guests on. Matter of fact, I never have guests on. So, I like what I'm seeing here. It's just too rich. There's no way we're going to be able to get in this material right now. There's way too much. And we still got to go into the Phoenix phenomenon, ancient history, and cataclysms. We got too much to go through, man. So let's go ahead.
There's a lot of material.
I appreciate you being on the show. I don't want
absolute honor, Jason. Thank
don't
you
want
so
this
much.
video to go on too long. And so you're just a freelance researcher. You're just searching for the truth, and you really don't have a YouTube channel or a platform.
I do have a YouTube channel. It's called Planet. Yeah, it's called Planetary Intelligence. I mean, I've only just started it about sort of last year, but I haven't been putting much material on there. I've kind of like started some audio. I've started an audio book reading of certain books, but I definitely want to do more materials to do with Archaix on there. So this year I'll be focusing on
you and
that as well.
Other people have contacted me. You want to take sound bites? Man, you're welcome to go through all my videos, take whatever clips you want out, and then do Islamic studies around them or whatever. I mean, you could fill your whole channel up with just Arabic and Islamic takes on Archaix data.
Oh, definitely.
You don't have to promote Archaix output, but you can definitely use the material to see what lines up and what doesn't. I mean, I have no problem with that. But I will.
I love your research, Jason. I mean, this is why I've been wanting to connect with you with this information and contribute to the Archaix research, because I feel it's so important. The truth, we're all in that pursuit of truth, and
right.
And the truth syncretizes. No matter which angle you look at it, you will still have the same result. And that's the same thing when I looked at your research. And also some of your, your spiritual values as well. I think it really lines up with me as well, personally. I do believe we are immortal souls in these husks, and we're here for a reason, and that is to make up the immortal soul within. So
I agree. It's going to be guys like you and I and others that I bring into the fold. It's the isolation. It's the acknowledgement of the commonalities, or they're going to show us what's right and what's wrong in all of our belief systems.
Yep.
But I don't know what that is.
Sorry, yeah, that was
okay.
video playing on its own.
That's okay.
Yep.
It happens.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go ahead and close this video.
Sure.
Send me a link.
Yep.
Send me a link. I think I might have the link in your email, don't I? To a planetary.
Yeah, it's always at the bottom of the email. Yeah.
Yeah, man. I'll go ahead and put the link in the description box, because you never know. 2 or 3 months from now, all of a sudden you just get wild and start putting a bunch of content on there, and your link will always be on this video. So
thank you, brother. Much appreciated.
And that'll work. I'm going to close out. I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation, and I promise you, within 4 or 5 days, you will see the next video with Amed, and it's going to be Phoenix, Prophecy, Doomsday, all that dark stuff. Let's see y'all later.